I've never posted anything like this before and need outside opinions since I can't see through this mess clearly. I, 30-year-old female, had a decent childhood filled with ups and downs like anybody else. My parents, 70-year-old female and 67-year-old male, are still together. My dad, 67-year-old male, physically and mentally abused me as far back as I can remember. The physical abuse has stopped, but the mental abuse has continued. I say continued because I still live with my parents. I always did pretty well in school and even went to college on my parents' dime, which I'm immensely and forever grateful for. I had a job in my third year of college and held that for about a year and a half, if I remember correctly. I left because of the toll it was putting on my body. I have a plethora of health conditions, including a heart problem, an autoimmune disease, diabetes, arthritis, and severe depression. Needless to say, I'm a bit of a mess. Anyway, I graduated college in December of 2019, and of course, Infection 19 hit in 2020. So because of that, I wasn't able to get a job until October of 2022. It was a big deal for me because it was only my second job I've ever had, and with my abysmal work experience and virtually non-existent resume, I was happy just to start somewhere. Now, the reason why I didn't have other jobs until then was because I was my parents' caregiver. I did the majority of the cooking, cleaning, yard work, in the summer, laundry, taking care of our animals, lots of cats and a couple of dogs, doing the grocery shopping, getting the oil changed, cutting my dad's hair, etc. Eventually, as my parents grew older, the type of things that needed to be done morphed over time. My dad became wheelchair-bound, besides walking here and there around the house, so I started taking him to and from work. I also manage his schedule for doctor appointments and getting him there and back since he can't drive anymore. My mom has had multiple surgeries that I've taken care of her from. I drove her to do different things, like getting a new sewing machine cabinet, going to work conferences that were some distance away, and helping her with different things around the house. As she's gotten older, like my dad, she has many health problems now. For one, she can't walk very far, and for the most part, no longer drives well. She also has 2 torn rotator cuffs, and her mind isn't as sharp or coherent anymore. I also have had surgeries and other things happen that my parents have taken care of me for. It's a push and pull kind of relationship. I don't have to pay for anything, but I do mostly everything else. Because of this, I haven't really been available to find a job, hence the poor resume. In 2017, I started a new relationship with my current boyfriend, 32-year-old male. He has helped me through a lot and been there for me through several surgeries, the mental abuse from my dad, helping out around my house occasionally, and other minor things. He lives in his own apartment, so we visit each other whenever we can, and it's worked out well so far. Now that that's out of the way, on to the rest. It all started about a week ago when I went to go get a puppy for our other dog who was getting lonely. My parents and I had talked about it for several weeks before we drove hours away to adopt her. I didn't tell my boyfriend because he always mentions that I have too many animals as is. He says this because if I move out, I'd have to take the animals that have bonded with me, and he's not sure how many we can afford to have. My boyfriend and I had been talking about either getting a place of our own or ideally him moving in with my parents and I for several years now. I mentioned it to my mom, and she was a bit surprised, maybe taken aback, by my comment. Nothing became of it until maybe half a year ago when I discussed this with my mom again. She was unsure and said she would talk to my dad. Apparently, what she didn't tell me was he was very upset, mad even, at this suggestion, so she let it go. Remember me not telling my boyfriend about the puppy? Well, he was extremely agitated with me when I finally told him several days later. I knew he was going to be mad either way, so I figured I'd tell him after the fact. He told me that waiting to tell him instead of discussing it with him was making him second-guess our relationship, since it made him feel like his opinion didn't matter. He said it also felt like I didn't trust him enough, and that maybe our priorities aren't the same. I apologized profusely. I hadn't thought of it that way, and it didn't even cross my mind what would happen to the puppy if I move out. He forgave me, and we continued to discuss how we would continue to move forward with the housing situation. So, I talked to my mom the next day about what had happened between myself and my boyfriend. She seemed like she was more on board with my boyfriend moving in with us. She wasn't so sure about the logistics of it and didn't think it could happen right away, but it was at least heading in the right direction. Later that night, I asked my dad if Mom had talked to him about if it would be possible for my boyfriend to move in. It did not go well. My dad basically exploded at me. He told me that as long as his name was on the mortgage and he was living under this house, there was no way he would let him live with us. I asked him why. He told me he doesn't need a reason why. I understood, to a certain extent, that yeah, it was a lot to ask for, but I figured it would be easier for everyone in the long run. It would be more income for the house since my mom retired a couple of years ago. It would mean more help around the house as well. Then I told him if I move out, then that means no more help with anything around the house. No more errands, no more cleaning, helping him keep track of appointments and making sure he takes meds on time. I started explaining that he's kind of putting me in a difficult situation if I move out. He said he didn't care, said that he can always hire help if he needed it since all I do is sleep, which in the past couple of years is true, I suppose. I'm still doing stuff around the house, just not as much as I used to. He told me that I should have thought of all of this a long time ago instead of gallivanting around with my boyfriend. After a bit of pushing, my dad told me he hated my boyfriend. He said that he didn't like the way he treated me, among other things that I can't remember at the moment. I then asked him, what was I supposed to do otherwise? He told me that I should have waited until both of them, my parents, were dead, and then I could go and do whatever I wanted. I wasn't sure how to respond to any of that. My eyes started to water, but I waited until he went to bed before I broke down. I felt as though all my time and effort into taking care of everything was worthless, that I wasn't supposed to have a life outside of them, and that I was worthless. Of course, I consulted my boyfriend, sobbing about what my dad had said to me. He was as surprised as I was about the fact that my dad didn't like him. However, he wasn't surprised that my dad rejected the idea of moving in. My boyfriend said that it's my dad's house and he can do what he wanted with it. He was also trying to comfort me about what my dad said about me. He told me that he's probably being mean for the sake of being mean, that I should try and move forward from here. The next morning, I talked with my mom about everything that had happened, from not telling my boyfriend about the puppy, to talking with my dad about the living situation, to him telling me that I was worthless, then telling my boyfriend about our conversation. The only real response I got was that I shouldn't have told my boyfriend about my dad hating him. That was it. No comforting words, no discussion about anything else, no telling me that I wasn't worthless. Nothing. I was stunned. My mom is usually a very caring person, and she's, for the most part, had my back about a lot of stuff. I got nothing. Needless to say, I'm pretty broken up about the whole situation. I feel like I'm being pulled in so many directions that I can't tell which way is up or down. I keep questioning myself. What am I supposed to do if my parents have to go into a long-term care facility? What about the house, the animals? I feel like I'm having to choose between my parents and my boyfriend. I feel selfish for even asking them now. Any constructive advice is much appreciated. I'll try to answer questions in the comments. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your parents don't care about you. If they did, your father wouldn't treat you like a servant, and your mother wouldn't let him do that. This is an incredibly cruel truth, but it's your starting point for your own life. You've given them a lot of your adult life so far. Your dad told you that, in his eyes, you solely exist to serve him. That's also why he doesn't like your boyfriend. He probably makes you realize you're worth more than this. I think you need to move out. Stop being their caretaker. Start therapy for yourself. Emotional and physical abuse leaves scars, and you probably don't even realize how deeply they've hurt you. I also think you should not move in with your boyfriend right away. Live on your own or with roommates for at least a few months. Learn that you can be okay and happy by yourself. This will build so much confidence. The boyfriend should understand if you give him a proper explanation and timeline. Moving in with him right away might leave you with the feeling of not being able to leave due to fear of not being able to survive on your own. Comment 2. I'm very worried about you. You are not advancing in your career or saving for your own retirement. Your relationship with your boyfriend may or may not last, and I truly hope your boyfriend is not also hurtful. I cared for my parents at the end of their lives when they were in their 80s and had COPD and cancer. We hired lots of help for them. I worked full-time, lived in my own home with my husband. Sometimes I even had time to spend an evening with a friend. It was time-consuming to care for them, but not impossible. Do you qualify for any disability? If not, my advice is to get a job, move out, learn about personal finance, and skip the puppy. What if your parents live for 20 more years? How will you provide for yourself? Your dad had no right to abuse you. You have the right to have a life outside of them and are not worthless. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments on my last post. They really helped me sort through some of my thoughts. Here's an update on what's been happening since then. After the blowout with my dad, things at home became tense. My mom's silence after I confided in her about the whole situation with my boyfriend and my dad left me feeling isolated. I've always known her to be the mediator, the one who smoothed things over, but this time she was just absent. My boyfriend, let's call him Mark, has been my rock through all of this. He's been patient and understanding, even when I've been a mess. We've been together for 6 years now, and he's seen the best and worst of me. He was there when I had to drop out of my first job due to my health issues, and he's been a constant presence, even when my dad's harsh words cut deep. Mark and I had been discussing moving in together for a while, but with my dad's outright refusal, we started looking for apartments. It was a big step, but we were excited about the possibility of finally having our own space. We found a cozy place not too far from my parents' house, which seemed perfect. But then, the unexpected happened. Mark got a job offer in another state. It was an incredible opportunity for him, one that he couldn't pass up. We were both over the moon about it, but it also meant we'd have to do long distance for a while. The plan was for me to join him once I figured things out with my parents. But that's when the heartbreak hit. As we were celebrating his new job, Mark's phone buzzed with a text. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but the preview of the message was enough to make my heart sink. "Can't wait for you to move here and start our life together," it read. I confronted Mark, and after a lot of avoiding, he admitted that he had been seeing someone else. Someone he met on a business trip a few months back. He said he was confused, that he loved us both, but the distance would make it easier to figure things out. I was devastated. All the trust and plans we had built together crumbled in an instant. I moved out of my parents' house shortly after. It was a difficult decision, but I needed space to heal and to be away from the constant reminders of my dad's disapproval and Mark's betrayal. I took a few of the animals that were closest to me, and I found a small apartment that allowed pets. My health hasn't been great, and the stress of everything certainly hasn't helped. I've been trying to manage my conditions on my own, which has been a challenge without the support system I was used to. I've had to learn to be more independent, to take care of myself without relying on my parents or Mark. Work has been a welcome distraction. My colleagues don't know much about my personal life, but they've been kind, and the routine has helped me find some semblance of normalcy. I've been saving up, hoping to move closer to work and further from the memories that haunt me. As for my parents, our relationship is strained. I visit them occasionally, but it's not the same. My mom's health has declined, and I can see the toll it's taking on my dad, even though he'd never admit it. I still worry about them, but I also know that I need to live my own life. The hardest part has been the loneliness. I miss the companionship, the shared dreams, and the comfort of knowing someone was there for me. But I'm learning to find strength within myself, to build a life that isn't defined by the expectations or actions of others. Boyfriend hates my cats and made it clear he finds them disgusting, but then he accidentally injured one. Oh boy. I confronted him. Oh boy. We had a big argument. Oh boy. And he left. Oh boy, now his boss is an animal lover. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I, 24 years old female, have been living with my boyfriend, 24 years old male, for about a year now. I've had my 2 little cats since 2019, and I always knew that my boyfriend wasn't a fan of them. But I had some hope that he was starting to bond with them. They sit on top of him, and he cuddles with them. He's actually the one who feeds them in the morning, etc. He often comments that he feels gross with the cats around, so I keep them and the areas that they exist in as clean as possible. I was hoping that he'd stop seeing them as dirty creatures. They don't even go outside, so they aren't dragging in pests or dirt or anything. The cat room in our place is the office, and they aren't allowed in our bedroom so that he can have a cat-free space, which is one of my bigger compromises because I grew up with my dogs, of course, bathed once a week and not outside all the time dogs, sleeping in the same bed as me. We had a tiff a couple of weeks ago about the litter boxes. I was really stressed out about cleaning the house and having to sort some chores for our landlord. And my boyfriend kind of snapped at me that he wasn't really concerned about my cats because they're my responsibility anyways, when I asked him to help me out by cleaning out the litter boxes since he mentioned that they were stinky and needed to be cleaned. It felt harsh, but I accepted the sentiment because he is right. They are my cats and not his. But it rubbed me the wrong way. We're in a fairly serious relationship, so when someone in his family might need something, for example, I wouldn't say I'm busy right now and it's not my responsibility, because to me, if I'm entering a serious commitment, I would very naturally accept my partner's family and friends as my own. And I know animals aren't people, but in my family, animals are a part of the family. We didn't talk about it too much, but just last night, I commented on how I'm glad that he bonded with my cats in the end. We were sitting on the couch and getting ready to make dinner, and he commented that he didn't want to get up because he wanted the cat to keep laying on him. So I felt like it was a natural comment to make. He told me that he isn't attached to them at all, and reminded me that he feels like the cat areas of our apartment are very disgusting. Then he said that if it were up to him, he'd get rid of them completely because he isn't attached to them, and that he merely tolerates this aspect of my lifestyle. But he isn't willing to actually bond with them because of how gross he finds their presence to be. He told me that he would never ask me to get rid of them because it would be unfair. But he also made it clear that he wouldn't have wanted them around if he would have met me before I got them. How can I find a compromise? Is tolerating animals enough, and am I asking for too much by asking for acceptance or even bonding? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You need to think about the future. He tolerates them, but they're just babies now. How far do you think that tolerating is going to stretch if they get sick? If large vet bills start coming? If their medical needs change and begin to impact your life? Is he going to be by your side? Is he going to be okay with you spending large amounts of money on them? What about when they get old and they're struggling to use a litter box? Or they vomit or pee where they shouldn't? Is he going to be understanding? Or is he going to want to get rid of them? When they pass, are you happy to never have a cat again? Comment 2. If you need help with chores, maybe ask him to do something so you can clean the litter box. Ask him to clean the litter box so you can do other things. See if the chore swap helps first. Like when I've had animals, I've agreed that the animal messes are mostly mine to clean up in shared spaces. Not 100% because you are partners in a team, but if there's a long list of things to do, you can do the cat stuff he hates and he can do the things you hate, then meet in the middle with the neutral chores. Now, for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been 2 weeks since I last posted about my boyfriend and my cats, and oh boy do I have an update for you. Buckle up because things got pretty intense. So, after the last incident, things were a bit tense between my boyfriend and me. I thought a lot about what you guys said, and I decided to have a serious talk with him. I wanted to find a middle ground where both my cats and my relationship could thrive. But before I could even bring it up, something happened that changed everything. Last week, my boyfriend had a work emergency that required him to stay late. I came home to find one of my cats, Whiskers, acting strangely. He was hiding under the bed, which he never does. I coaxed him out and noticed he was limping. Panic set in, and I rushed him to the vet. It turned out he had a sprained paw. The vet asked if he could have fallen or been stepped on. I didn't have an answer, but I was suspicious. I got home with Whiskers, now bandaged up, and my boyfriend was already there. He seemed off, avoiding eye contact, and when I told him about Whiskers, he just mumbled a half-hearted apology. I didn't want to accuse him without proof, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on. The next few days were rough. Whiskers was recovering, but my trust in my boyfriend was shaken. I started noticing little things, like how he'd avoid the cat room more than usual, and how he'd get irritated when the cats came near him. It was like he was a different person from the guy who'd let the cats sit on him. Then, 2 days ago, I got a call from a neighbor while I was at work. She said she heard loud noises coming from my apartment. My heart dropped. I thanked her and rushed home, fearing the worst. I opened the door to find my boyfriend yelling at my other cat, Sprinkles, who was cowering in the corner. I'd never seen him like this. He was red in the face, and when he saw me, he tried to play it off like he was just disciplining the cat for knocking something over. That was the last straw. I confronted him about Whiskers' injury and the way he was treating Sprinkles. He finally broke down and admitted that he'd accidentally stepped on Whiskers' paw during his work emergency night, which wasn't a work emergency at all. He'd come home early, got frustrated with the cats, and it happened. I was furious, not just because of the injury, but because he lied to me. We had a huge argument. I told him that if he couldn't respect my family, which included my cats, then he couldn't be a part of it. He tried to apologize, but I could see the relief in his eyes. It was clear he'd been wanting out for a while, but didn't have the guts to say it. So he packed his things and left. It was hard, but I knew it was for the best. Whiskers and Sprinkles are my little family, and they deserve to be in a loving and safe environment. Now for the subtle justice part. Remember how I mentioned my boyfriend had a work emergency? Well, it turns out that his boss is a huge animal lover and a regular at the local animal shelter. When my boyfriend went back to work, he had no idea that I'd volunteered at that same shelter and had become good friends with his boss through our shared love for animals. I never told his boss about what happened, but karma has a funny way of working things out. My boyfriend was up for a promotion, and it was down to him and another colleague. His boss decided to take the team out for a bonding day at the animal shelter. My boyfriend had to spend the whole day pretending to care for animals, and it must have been clear to his boss that he wasn't genuine. In the end, he didn't get the promotion. His colleague, who genuinely enjoyed the day and was great with the animals, did. My boyfriend never found out that I knew his boss or that I had anything to do with the shelter. But seeing him have to fake compassion for animals when he couldn't even show it for my cats felt like a small victory. Pete's fiancée excludes his family from wedding planning, and I tell him he's treating them poorly. She uninvites his whole family from the wedding. I, 32-year-old female, have a good friend Pete who got engaged to Kelly, 29-year-old female, about 6 months ago. I was originally friends with just Pete's sister Lynn, 32-year-old female, but have been close with Pete since high school, since we were all in the same friend group and did a lot of the same activities. Kelly is taking the lead on wedding planning, and by my estimation is excluding Pete's family at every turn. I don't know if it's on purpose, but Pete's family is starting to feel pretty hurt by it. They're a pretty close-knit family, and always have been. They still take vacations together every summer, do a weekly group FaceTime, and as I mentioned, they were the kind of siblings that actually hung out voluntarily in high school. When Lynn got married, Pete was the man of honor. Gave a unalived toast, by the way. Kelly has claimed tradition on a few things. For example, his mom shouldn't walk him down the aisle because he's supposed to be up there already. Lynn can't be in his wedding party because it's supposed to be just men. Which I suppose I could see, except that when it suits her, tradition gets thrown out the window. For example, the grandmothers are going to be the flower girls even though Pete has twin 5-year-old nieces. And no, it's not a child-free wedding. Also, both of Pete's grandmothers have passed, so it will just be Kelly's grandmothers as flower girls. There have also been little things. Not inviting anyone from Pete's side to the bridal shower, nixing a memory table/chair since it would only represent his relatives, and passive-aggressive comments. On their own, they'd be fine, but altogether, I can see why his family feels pushed aside. I was at the family's house recently without Pete, and his parents are so confused about what they did for Pete and Kelly to not want them involved in such a big milestone. And Lynn is just disappointed that he would let his fiancée push them aside like that. They're not mad, just defeated, and it's definitely changing the way they think of their relationship dynamic. I want to give Pete the benefit of the doubt. He's a pretty go-with-the-flow guy. And Kelly is doing the bulk of the wedding planning, so I don't think he realizes how much her family is taking priority on a day that's supposed to be about joining two families. How do I gently tell him that he's treating his family really crappy? And while a wedding is just one day, he's setting a precedent that his family is allowed to be excluded from their lives. Or are we all just being paranoid? Common questions. Yes, he asked that his sister, mother, and nieces be involved. She told him they couldn't be due to a combination of tradition and wanting to involve her grandmothers instead. His family isn't talking to him about it because they are terrified that if they overstep or question Kelly, they won't even be allowed to attend. She has used the phrase, if they don't like it, they don't have to come a few times, not in regards to his immediate family in particular, but they're on edge because of it. Pre-engagement relationship was fine. Not super close, but they all got along. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Probably an unpopular opinion, but I would stay out of it, honestly. The most you should do is encourage them to speak up. If neither Pete nor his family are willing to bring these issues up with her, then they sort of get what they get. Not that it's right, but this isn't your problem to tackle, it's theirs. And by not bringing this up with her, they can look forward to many years of the same treatment in the future. And by not expressing their feelings of being left out, they send an unintended message that what she's doing is fine with them. They won't even be able to say, "We tried." They have to stand up for themselves, including Pete, or get walked on. If she's happy to cut people out who disagree with her, you may be cut out of your friendship with Pete if you try to intervene. Eventually, he'd have no one left in his corner. Let them handle their own issues. Comment 2. So, this is a situation you need to back out of. Not your wedding, not your family. I totally get your concerns, but ultimately, Pete is responsible for his family being included in his wedding. He's a big boy, and it's his issue to handle, and you butting in could very well make things worse. He's a big boy, his parents are adults, everyone involved is an adult, and if they are bothered by what's happening, that can discuss it with him themselves, and they don't need you to advocate for them beyond having a singular conversation with Pete. If you really need to, you can say your piece to Pete. Then that's it. You are too emotionally invested in this wedding. Now for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been a month since I last posted about my friend Pete and his fiancée Kelly's wedding drama. You guys wanted an update, so buckle up because things have gone from bad to worse. After my last post, I decided to have a heart-to-heart with Pete. We've been friends since high school, and I've always known him to be laid back, but this was something else. I told him how his family was feeling left out and how it was breaking their hearts, especially Lynn's. Pete seemed taken aback. He had no idea things had gotten this bad. Pete and Kelly's relationship had always been a bit of a power struggle, with Kelly often taking the lead. Before the engagement, Pete's family had tried to bond with Kelly, inviting her to family game nights and birthday dinners. But Kelly always kept her distance, preferring to spend time with her own family or just with Pete. Now Pete promised to talk to Kelly and sort things out. But when he brought it up, Kelly threw a fit. She accused him of not supporting her and said that if he couldn't stand by her decisions, maybe they shouldn't get married at all. Pete was stunned. He had never seen this side of Kelly before. The next day, Pete's mom called me, sobbing. Kelly had uninvited Pete's entire family from the wedding. She claimed it was because they were causing too much drama and she wanted a peaceful day. Pete was caught in the middle, torn between his fiancée and his family. He tried to reason with Kelly, but she wouldn't budge. Lynn was devastated. She had always been close to Pete, and now she felt like she was losing her brother. She confided in me that she had always been skeptical of Kelly, noticing how she would subtly put Pete down in front of others or make decisions without consulting him. But Lynn had kept quiet, not wanting to cause a rift. The situation escalated when Pete's dad confronted Kelly. He had always been a gentle man, but seeing his family treated this way made him lose his cool. He demanded that Kelly explain why she was pushing them away. Kelly just smirked and said that it was her wedding and she could do whatever she wanted. Pete was at a loss. He loved Kelly, but he couldn't understand why she was acting this way. He started to see the pattern of control and manipulation that had been there all along. He remembered how she would get jealous when he spent time with his family, or how she insisted on moving to a city far from where he grew up. The final straw came when Pete found out that Kelly had been messaging his ex-girlfriend, trying to dig up dirt on him. She had always been insecure about their past relationship, but this was a new low. Pete was heartbroken. He realized that the woman he loved was not who he thought she was. In a dramatic turn of events, Pete called off the wedding. He told Kelly that he couldn't marry someone who had so little respect for him and his family. Kelly was furious, accusing him of choosing his family over her and saying that he would regret this decision. Pete moved back in with his parents for the time being. They welcomed him with open arms, relieved to have their son back, but heartbroken over the pain he was going through. Lynn was there for him too, offering support and reminding him that family sticks together. As for me, I'm just trying to be there for Pete and his family during this tough time. It's been a whirlwind of emotions, and I never expected things to turn out this way. But I guess sometimes you don't see the true colors of a person until you're faced with a situation like this. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.